Pete Fischen, what's up,
How's it
man? How
going?
are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, good. Going well. Good to see you.
Yeah, man. So Pete, we've known each other for seems like forever at this point. We go way back. But I do want to give you an introduction, let the people know who you are, at least for my audience. And so, Pete, you're a coach, you have a PhD in nutritional sciences, natural pro bodybuilder, public speaker, author, fat muscle sponsored coach, husband, dog dad. So you juggle a lot, but I do know you as a friend, and we've known each other for when did we meet? I mean
Oh,
we met through bodybuilding, but I don't remember
yeah,
what year it was. It was
probably
like
like 2013,
yeah,
2014, probably
yeah,
something like that. I mean, it's been at least 10 years. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so you have been bodybuilding for a long time. You're one of the few people that I know who like really started not working out, like exercising. Like you got into bodybuilding at a really young age. When was your first show? What weren't you like 17 or 18 or something
18,
like that?
18, 2004. Yeah, it was April of 2004. So like next month will be 20 years.
I don't really even see 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds when I go to the amateur shows. Do you really
Yeah.
see too many of them? I don't.
Depends on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you'll see two, three teens in a class. Like when I competed, I wasn't the only teen in my class. So,
Right, right, right.
yeah.
It's rare to get into it so young, and then what's rare is to like stick with it for
Yeah.
that long. Because I started lifting at 20,
Yeah.
between 20 and 21, and it was just at an apartment gym. And as soon as I started lifting, I knew like I was like I want to be a bodybuilder. Like that was what I wanted to do. Did you like when did you start lifting? Did you just start lifting and immediately do a bodybuilding show?
No, so I played like sports in school, like middle school, and I played like baseball through like 10th grade. And so like
Did you? I played
we
baseball in
lifted,
high school too.
yeah, I played basketball till like 8th or ninth grade or and baseball till like 10th grade. And you lifted some for sports. So like you know what I mean? Like so I did some of
Yeah.
that, but like it was never serious. Like, I think probably once I was done with baseball, like my sophomore year of high school when I was like 16, uh, then like I started taking it more seriously that summer and then just kind of kept going with it. And I made quite a bit of progress that first year. And there were a couple people at my gym that did like natural bodybuilding shows and they're like, man, you built a lot of muscle and made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
You should do a show. But looking back, like I started lifting, I was 125 pounds, and like I went from 125 to like 170 in like a year and a half of like taking it seriously, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I it's funny because I have posted the pictures before of me at 170 after lifting weights seriously for a year and a half and gaining 45 pounds. It still doesn't even really look like I lift weights like at that point. But I dieted down and did a show and took pretty much last and everything because I probably
Yeah,
should
but
have waited longer.
the sooner you start, like that's like
But
you get that experience out of the way.
yeah,
Like you get those first like
yeah.
mistakes and all that stuff out of the
Yep.
way
And then
early.
I came back. So then it was like the extra motivation like I needed. Okay, like, I want to prove that I can actually do this and not just take last and everything. And so like 2 more years later, I came back when I was 20 and I won a novice class and took, I placed in a couple open classes. You know what I mean? Like I was starting to be more competitive, like I wasn't just last and everything anymore. And then, a couple more years later, 22, I finally won an open class. And then 26, I won an overall and got my pro card. And then, I've competed 30, 34, 37. So, um,
Yeah, it's like we've kind of merged schedules. So you and I are on the same kind of prep off-season schedule, except you're just like a few months ahead of me, which we'll talk
yeah,
about because we'll get into like, you know, growing for the long term and how to stay in this sport for the long term.
yeah.
But was there anything like that motivated you internally to like get into bodybuilding? Like any insecurities, or like did you just like were like, oh, this just seems like fun? Like for me, I was always like a real skinny kid. Like I
Yeah,
really, like how like some kids you just like are like so thin and like they'll have abs and they're just not even doing it, like
yeah,
just from being a
yeah.
kid. Like that's how
Yeah.
I was as a kid. So I
Yeah.
had, I mean, my arm was like this the
Yeah.
whole way, all the
I
way
was the
from the
same
wrist
way.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was 125 pounds. So like I needed
Yeah.
to get bigger if I was going to keep playing sports, which I didn't really end up doing. I just stuck with lifting at that point. But like, I needed
Yeah.
to get bigger. So like I was trying to lift, you know what I mean? And take it more seriously for that, purpose alone.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just kind of went from there. But yeah, I was not big. So
Where did you get your information from back then? Because like I used to go to the vitamin shop and like get the muscle and fitness magazines or whatever, and like, you'd have like
yeah.
jacked bodybuilder on the front or fitness model on the front. And I would go and like be like, oh, what are they doing? Like, let me like, and I'd write down the plan on pen and paper and just go and replicate and not
Yeah.
look like them.
Yeah, so I think initially when I started, it was still like, this was like 2002 when I started like lifting seriously, and '04 when
Mhm.
I competed for the first time. And so bodybuilding.com forums and like some of those forums were kind of in their infancy. So like we weren't even
Yeah.
to like the people who were learning on the forums yet. Like it was whoever had competed at your gym or like magazines or,
Yeah.
like I was like the guy who like, I befriended all like the biggest, strongest people in the gym and figured out what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Just pick the
uh,
biggest guy in the gym and ask him, hey, what are you doing?
yeah, I made friends with some of the biggest, strongest
Yeah.
guys in the gym, and I'd pick stuff up from them and like try to learn because that was the only way you could. And it was interesting back then. Like now, I coach and you work with people from around the world.
Yeah.
Location doesn't matter, but back then, you worked with someone from your gym, to prep you for a show. And so, some gyms had people that had better approaches than others, right? And their people from that gym would tend to do better, or not, or whatever. And yeah, I mean that's how the information got passed down. And then we hit another phase then probably by like 2006 ish, where we were getting, the forums were really picking up, and like from 2006 to like I don't know, 2012 ish.
Pre social media.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
6 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, this was like 2006 to 2012 ish. That,
Yeah.
like 2005, six up to like 2012 ish. It was like the heyday of the forums, and
Yeah.
you had, all of them, right? Like
Yeah.
Bodybuilding.com, T Nation, Muscular Development, Intense Muscle, like, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
tons of them, right? And that's where all
Yeah.
the information was passed around. And then, yeah, and then it turned into now it's, then it was social media, more so Facebook. Now it's probably a lot of Instagram, and I don't
Yeah.
TikTok, but I know a lot of people are on there. But
Right. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I
uh,
don't either, but I know it's huge and I know there's a
yeah,
lot of information on there.
yeah.
There's just information everywhere. I mean, anywhere you look, there's just
It doesn't
information
mean it's
and
good, but
yeah. It has its everything that has a pro has a con. The bigger the pro, the bigger the
yeah,
con, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
nothing comes without a side effect. But
yeah,
so the last time you competed, we both competed in 23
yeah. Last year, yeah,
last year, and then the time before that, we both competed in 2020.
yeah,
So one thing about us that we have in common is we both kind of competed when things were not, I would say, the perfect scenario. Things situations were not ideal. There comes a point where when you're doing this, it's like, all right, I've been growing for long enough. It's time to compete. And then once you start prep, that's when things happen. So let's talk about some of the experiences that we've had and some of the things that we've gone through during prep, because I think a lot of people look at prep like it has to be this like perfect setting to go and be at your best. But I mean, when you're prepping, especially natural, you're prepping for a long time, and that leaves the door open for a lot of different things to come up. And it's always good to plan for the unexpected. I can't think of a prep where something like didn't come up. Some sort of circumstance, some sort of monkey wrench was thrown at you. So I think part of being a good bodybuilder and someone that keeps getting better is being able to adapt to the imperfections that come up and really anything that comes your way because you know different things happen, could be career, could be something crazy like the world changing like what happened to us. So what did that look like for you in 2020, like because that process started and then completely you were going right, everything went left. So you
Yeah.
had to kind of maintain. I remember you had to maintain stage conditioning for quite a long time during this process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I started prep and yeah, everything was going well, and I was going to do a show in March of 2020 and a photo shoot and another show or two in April of 2020, and obviously none of those things happened because the world shut down like 6 days out from my first
Because you
target show of
started
the
prep in
year.
2019, that right? So you
Oh
actually
yeah,
started. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I started dieting probably I think like May or June of 2019, and then dieted part of the way down, then took a diet break and took like a couple
Yeah,
months
yeah.
out of a deficit, and then yeah, dieted the rest of the way down, and it was super smooth, probably one of my smoothest preps ever until the end
Yeah.
when the world shut down. And so um yeah, so then I basically stayed near stage lean. I think we Cliff,
Well,
I learned
how did that, so were they like, okay, shows are not going to happen, like this show is
yeah, they were just
canceled? Is
canceling.
that what happened
Yeah,
in your
yeah, they
situation?
were just like they were supposed to happen. No, we can't have the show or whatever. And so
Yeah.
so then yeah, I started looking for like where in the country had the earliest possible shows so that I could just
Yeah.
hop on and make all of this time worth it, because I was like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not competing. I wasn't planning to compete again until like this year, and I ended up competing last year. But I mean, I knew it was going to be a while, and so
You knew in 2019
20,
that you're
like
like, I was
I've
that
taken like 4
2020.
years. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Because
I was like,
okay.
I've been dieting for almost a year. Like I'm done for 3 4
Yeah.
years, and I uh was like, yeah, I'm getting on stage to make this worth it. So yeah, I held
Yeah.
near stage lean, and
How
I
long did
had
you hold for? How many months?
well, so my probably 3, because it was June. I competed in June. There was the first Natural Pro show in the U.S. post COVID was in
Yeah.
June, so I did that.
Yeah.
And so uh, and yeah, it was at a casino in Minnesota. So it was on a reservation. So even though you couldn't have it in the state, like tribal law dictates what's
This
happened.
show was at a casino.
Was that
Oh,
the
no
on
better
the
place to
was
have
that
a
the
show. There's
reservation?
people smoking cigarettes,
Yeah.
walking
Oh
by
yeah. I
and
mean, yeah,
gambling,
exactly.
people in
Oh yeah.
diapers. Perfect.
Yeah. No, they were, yeah. I mean, that you walk through the casino and like,
Yeah.
people had a drink in one hand, cigarette in the other
Yeah.
one, and it's June of 2020, there was not a concern there.
Yeah,
And
right, right,
so,
right. And
yeah,
you're just
it was,
walking through with a tan,
oh yeah.
like
Yeah.
looking
Back
like
to
you're like,
to the
yeah,
auditorium where the show was and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. No, so we did,
All face sunken in.
yeah. So we did, yeah, so I did that show, and then there was I ended up doing an NPC show in Missouri. Missouri had like no restrictions at all,
Yeah.
and like so that was right in the beginning of July of 2020.
Okay.
That was packed auditorium, business as usual, like no
Yeah.
anything because they didn't have any restrictions down there. Then I flew. Then we did a photo shoot. I did because Amy was
Here
lean
in
at that
Crown
point
Point,
too.
is that where you did the photo shoot here in Crown Point?
Yeah, we did one with Haley. Yeah,
Yeah.
and did that. That was yeah, like 3 or 4 days after that Missouri show. Then I went to Indiana, and Amy was lean at that point too. So we did like a
Yeah.
couple photo shoot and stuff. And
Gotcha.
then because Indiana didn't have much for restrictions at that point. And then yeah, then in July, like mid late July, we flew to Vegas and did a show out there. And
And for
so
people that don't know, like 12 weeks, 3 months of maintaining stage conditioning,
well,
even when your food is
it was like
coming, like
5. So we capped it at like 5 to 7 over, and then just dieted me back down. So I didn't stay
5 to 7 pounds over.
yeah. So
Okay. Okay.
it's still not much better. I mean, it's
No,
still
no, you're still, even like when food's coming up and you're eating more, and even 5 to 7 pounds, you still feel like trash. You don't
yeah,
feel well.
yeah,
Your training's still brutal.
yeah.
Your sleep is still brutal. You're still starving.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your strength
Yeah.
sucks, like all that. Yeah. No, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like it was great. It
Yeah.
was funny though, because in 2023, like we're getting to like, because I competed in March, April of 2023, and we're getting to like this time of year. And I remember thinking, whoa, like my shows are going to be like, because I was getting pretty lean, and I was like, man, I'm done in like a month. Like
Yeah.
what, like, because 2020, I was like so traumatized, it felt like it was never going to end. That like
You're like, oh, this
2020,
is a breeze.
yeah, legit felt like an absolute breeze.
Yeah.
I got lean. I did a photo shoot and a couple shows, and I was done. It didn't drag on for months on
When
end.
you have a rough prep, a quick, a nice smooth one, just you're like, oh wow, okay. So like if I could
Yeah,
go through that, I could go through
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
So did you find that so while I was because I was prepping during 2020 as well, it was a little bit different because I knew going in like because I started prep in 2019 as well.
Mhm.
And once things changed, we kind of looked at it as like, a lot of people are gonna be off their game.
Yeah,
And so it's like if we can
yeah,
take it
yeah,
as in a strategic route, like we could catch some people sleeping
yeah.
and do some damage. So I found that prepping during that time, I kind of was like, what else would I be doing? Like this is the perfect time to prep because not that it's a distraction, but kind of. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
if you haven't prepped before, then prepping, I mean, it takes up a lot of time and energy and focus and you're you're grinding. So
Mhm.
especially during those, later months. So
Mhm.
I thought it was like, okay, this is like, yeah, this isn't perfect, but this is perfect because this is, a time where we can gain one advantage point over the people that you're going to be competing against. Because a lot of people are like, what are we doing? Like, are we competing? Are we not competing? So they're off their diet. They're not, staying focused. And it's not until like really like the last couple of weeks, they're like, oh, okay, the show is going to go on. So it was kind of like we just went in with, yes, let's do it. And whatever happens, if the show doesn't happen, the show doesn't happen. And then fortunately, the shows that we had scheduled happen. So
Yeah. No, I will say I was really surprised. Like, a lot of people were off their game, right? And COVID was
mhm.
really bad for a lot of people. But like when those first shows in like June and early July, those first couple shows I went to, everybody who like was stepping on stage was like people who were targeting things in the spring and just stayed on their game the whole time. Like
Mhm.
the level of competition, like some of the shows were smaller, but the level of competition was nuts. Like just everyone was on, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
on, like, I mean, people, some of these shows, people were flying in from wherever because it was like, hey, these are the shows that are happening in June and
Yeah.
July.
Do you typically
And,
fly for when you compete? Because I know you
uh,
went to Vegas. Do you typically fly
yeah,
or do you typically drive?
I drive if I can. I mean, like I drove to I because I did competed in Buffalo and Lexington last year, and I
Yeah.
drove to both of them.
Yeah. Do you
And
because I when I fly, if I flew because I've never flown for a show, I've always just drove. And when I was in Texas, I did fly to Indiana, but I flew back a couple weeks in advance
yeah,
because I hold water when I fly.
yeah, that's where you got to probably. That's what I try to tell most people: fly by like Thursday at the latest if you're competing Saturday, so that you have time to
Yeah.
let that regulate back out.
Yeah, right, right. But I didn't know if you actually, is that the only show that you've flown for?
So far, yeah, I've done 15 shows, but like I said, I've driven to Lexington twice. I've driven to Buffalo. I competed in Youngstown, Ohio, drove
Yeah.
there. But yeah, Vegas is the only one I've flown for.
It seems like it would be a fun place to compete.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun afterwards to go down to
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Especially afterwards, because there's just so much
it
stuff you can do,
was after my last show, so it was fun
Sin
to go to
City.
like get deep dish pizza down on the strip and go to like Pink Box and get donuts.
Yeah. What's your post like go to thing? Because I know
I have done a
you're like
number
a
of things.
steak and potatoes guy. I remember like you said like, man, afterwards I had steak and potatoes. I'm like, you mean to tell me after your show you went and got
I
steak
had
and potatoes?
usually after my last show of the year, it's pizza or burgers or like the last time I thought I was gonna go get some barbecue when I was in Lexington, and like that day I was like, you know what sounds really good right now? Pasta and a steak. And so I found an Italian place that had,
Yeah.
so I had we went, I think it was like a, I don't remember what it was. It was like a chain similar to like an Olive Garden that we
What did
went
we
to.
do in
And
Texas? Uh, did
we
we
got
have
barbecue.
barbecue? We had barbecue in Texas, and then we
We
went
had
to,
wings.
oh, we
You bought
went to
all
the
the,
donut place.
you those wings. You ordered us
Dude,
like 60 of them.
dude, those were, though, I still haven't had better wings than I had in Austin. Those wings
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
amazing. And then we
No,
went, and then didn't we go downtown and we went, was it Voodoo
donuts.
Donuts?
Yeah, voodoo.
Yeah, it
Because
was Voodoo Donuts with the
yeah,
like
because
giant
do you
donuts.
remember we were at the gym and the
Yeah.
guy, remember like someone
Oh, didn't
literally
someone
died at the
die?
gym and they shut the gym down when we were there and we couldn't get in the
Oh
locker room to get
yeah,
it. So like all of my stuff was in the locker room. And so like
I
we
forgot about
like went and
that.
did, and then like we had to go back to the gym and I had to like pick all my stuff up in a bag because they like cut all the locks off the lock. They cut my lock and they cut all the locks off the lockers and like everyone's stuff was just in bags
I
because someone died in
remember
the locker
that.
room.
It was like
Yeah.
the one day you were there too.
Yeah.
Like we trained, and then we came back because we were just gonna leave the stuff there, and then we came back, and there was like ambulance, like all that, like not ambulance. It was like coroner. Like someone
But
actually
yeah,
just
and then
dropped dead at the gym.
like yeah, all of my stuff, like my phone, my wallet,
Yeah,
my keys, like all of my stuff was like gym stuff was just like the police handed me like a garbage bag
I
with all my
remember you
stuff
were
in it.
pissed too. We were
Yeah,
on the way to Voodoo, and you were just like, you were
yeah,
still talking about it. You're like, ah, yeah. And then I remember because I was like, you can just leave your stuff here. Like, it's fine. Like, we'll go and we're coming
yeah,
back,
yeah,
And then the one time that you're there
yeah,
visiting,
yeah,
somebody literally drops dead from that
yeah,
time that we left. And I
yeah.
think he had like a heart attack at the gym. I think
Yeah,
that's what
I
happened.
have no idea. I just
I
know that
forgot
like
about
I
that.
just know they weren't letting people into the locker room, and I had to pick all my stuff up from my like not out of my locker, like out of a bag from the police,
Yeah.
like a garbage bag.
I remember that. That was nuts. So yeah,
Yeah,
so you've done 15 shows, which is that's a ton of shows. That's a ton of shows. So one thing that's just, evident is you just keep progressing. Keep making progress. So we talked about the off seasons and how long we take off season. I don't know about you, but whenever I tell somebody how long I take off, like they're because when's your next show? That's like a question you get
yeah,
often, mostly at the gym.
yeah,
And people, say when's your next show? And it's like, not for like 3 years. And like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I take, three, and I think the longest I've taken is 5 years. Once I started, like that's the longest I've taken is the 5 year off season, which was 2015 to 2020.
yeah,
And that's something that they always get blown away by the length of how much time we take off during our growth season. So what do you look for in your growth season? What do you have your athletes look for in their growth seasons? And like, what is some advice that you would give to people who are just interested in making progress for the long term?
yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just take time. Like, yeah, don't rush the process. Take
Yeah.
time because you're not going to grow if you're trying to compete. You see this every year, right? Someone competes in the spring, and then there's like a local show in their area again in the fall,
Mhm.
so they try to do the fall show. Like, unless you're genetically elite or a beginner, you're probably not growing between spring and fall if you just dieted for spring and you're trying to diet again for fall. That gives
Mhm.
you like 2 months out of a deficit, like
And
that's
then maybe competing again the following spring.
yeah, well, but then that starts running people into
Yeah,
a downward spiral because their
right.
hormones metabolic rate don't recover from the first prep before the second or from and so it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then
Yeah.
yeah, it starts getting harder to get stage lean, right? Like um
Start to look a little bit flatter too, like
yeah, it
flatter,
starts yeah,
softer.
yeah, they start looking worse over time because now like food has to get lower and cardio has to get higher. And so then they're pushing
Yep.
harder and that's only making things worse. And really the answer is just not competing for a while and eating food
Right.
and being at a normal body weight or a
Yeah,
sustainable body composition.
it's when, you love something like bodybuilding, and people do love it. People who really get
Yeah.
into it, they really get into it. And it can be an addicting feeling. There's a lot of fun involved in the process of like getting on stage and doing your thing after you've put in all that work and being lean. Like, who doesn't like to be shredded? I mean, it
Mhm.
is, other than the way it feels, the way it looks, it's
Yeah.
awesome. It's an amazing feeling and a huge accomplishment. But when you compete too frequently like that, you do get worse. And it becomes do you love this sport enough to take a step back and do what's necessary to get better each time you compete? Or are you just doing this for fun? Because some people are just doing it for fun, then maybe they're not so focused on that. And, even during their growth season or their off season, they're kind of not focused and doing all the things that you should be doing to look better when you do compete, since that's like the off season is where that focus really needs to be, placed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you really, really love this and you're interested in looking better each time, these off seasons are, I mean, that's where everything happens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's where the real progress happens.
Right.
And the people like you said that get really into it and think that like they have to compete over and over and over again,
Yeah.
those are the people that tend to not last very long. Like those aren't the people who
Yeah.
are competing for 20 years.
Yeah.
Those are the people that end up like looking worse over time or, develop,
Eating
psychological
disorders.
eating
Yeah.
disorders or like just end up on like TRT before they're
Yeah.
30, because they never stop dieting and get back to a sustainable body composition.
Yeah.
Um, where that's sustainable. Um, and so yeah, no, I think I think just taking time, I always tell people like I try to always get clients to not diet for at least 6 months after a show,
Hmm.
preferably longer, and
Yeah.
like any sort of cut, just
If they can handle it, right? Like
yeah,
if
get
it's
back to a
something they,
sustainable
yeah.
place, and at least 6 months out of a deficit, preferably longer.
Yeah.
And then at least a year between show, like if you're doing spring shows, we're not dieting again until next spring at the soonest.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Especially if you're I mean, if you're a
yeah,
bodybuilder, like
especially if
it's
you gotta
different if
have,
you're bikini. Bikini, you could compete a little bit more frequently, but if you're a bodybuilder and or figure or anyone that's like
yeah,
you have to build muscle, you
yeah,
have to take, I think two to 3 years is really good, but we've
yeah.
taken like
If you're
longer for
trying to
sure.
grow, that's
Yeah.
going to be your best bet is 2 to 3, 2 to 3 years.
Mm,
They'll maximize growth, right?
mm.
Because everyone thinks, oh, well, I'll take a year, but I think what they oftentimes don't think about is the fact that okay, so you got a year
You
between
got to
shows.
grow the muscle back.
It takes it takes 4 to 6 months to get
Yeah.
100% back to normal. And
Yeah.
then it's going to take you, and it's going to take you probably for most people 5, 6 months at least to diet back down. So that doesn't leave very much time where like hormones are optimal between like getting back to normal and starting prep
Yeah.
again. Like you only get a couple months like
And
of like
in that first 4 to 6 months, you're building the muscle that you lost during prep.
yeah, yeah.
So
I
like
mean,
the
pretty
really
much.
new muscle, that doesn't even start for, we'll say 4 to 6 months. And then after that, it's real slow growth. So
Yeah. No, and
yeah.
I, like in my case, right? Like I competed in March, April last year, and had a photo shoot in March before my shows. Probably about a year ago this time is when I had my photo shoot. And then it was probably like August before I was getting back to like, okay, my strength's about up to where it was last off season, but like that's 4 months later. Like I was starting to
Right.
get about back to where I was.
Yeah.
And then I've progressed beyond that since August,
Yeah.
but it took probably 4 months to really get back to, I mean, it took probably close to 2 months if I look back at like my communications with Cliff every week. It probably took back, before I finally said, yeah, I'm not hungry all the time anymore. I
Yeah,
actually
that's
feel
the
pretty
thing
normal.
for sure. Like
It was
those little
probably close to 2 months to get to that point.
like
And
those
that's even
side
with gaining weight back.
Yeah, those side effects like hunger. For me, sleep is a big one. So
Yeah.
like I know that sleep like it does take me like 6 months to get that back to normal. But the
Yeah.
hunger, when you start looking at food more normally, and you're not, you know what I'm talking about. Like things
Yeah.
are just more normal because, like, you and I were always like texting each other for food stuff and like
Yeah.
different
People,
places and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, like some of the YouTube eating challenges.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that stuff's like, so when you're not like so focused on these things and like, yeah, I'm like, oh, I want to do like a 10K challenge and stuff like that,
I
just
almost
these
went
like
to
little
one of
side
those.
effects.
I almost went and watched someone that Randy Santel was just like 30 minutes from here last week. I'm
I'm
well into
surprised
the
you
off
didn't
season.
go.
I
I mean,
know
that's
it didn't
like
work.
you, yeah.
It didn't work out. I didn't get done with like a client call till like right before it was going to happen, and it was like 30 minutes away.
You think you could
Um,
handle one of those 10K challenge?
oh,
Like
probably. I
what was
probably
it? Wasn't it Amy? Like, so it was like Amy, Pete's
yeah.
wife. She did a 10K challenge, and we were texting each other during it, and you're like, "Oh, she's going strong," and I'm like, "No way, she's gonna do this! Like, no way." She's like, "Well, she's got these like secret weapons, and they're these cookies that are like this big, but they're like
PDX,
how many
yeah, yeah.
calories? Like 500 calories a cookie or something, or like
Oh, those
400."
PDXs are I think like 800 or more. I think per
800
cookie.
calories a cookie. Okay, so like
They're
that's
like
like the
it's
ace
like
in
a
the
fistful of cookie.
yeah, yeah. And then I remember you were telling me like after I think it was I don't know, some form of like a second breakfast or some form of something. You're like, "Oh, she's slowing down," but she started hitting the juice like the like what was it, apple juice or what was she
Yeah,
drinking? It
yeah,
was apple juice?
yeah.
Yeah, and you like sent me a picture and she was like laying, she was like holding it, and she was like, she got real close. What did she get to? She
I
got to
don't
like,
know.
she got
I
to,
don't know. I don't know if she's ever gotten above like 5 or 6 when she's attempted to try to do it. It's always
I
in
respect she tries though.
yeah. But it's funny because my off season's like 4, so it's
Yeah,
like it's
your
right.
food gets real high up there. So you have a real high metabolism. Like I mean, but
Real, I would
like
say,
that
yeah.
does, go ahead.
I would say real adaptive though, because
Yeah.
like last off season, I think my food got up to like in the last couple preps. I mean, my food will get up to 4,000 calories, maybe even a touch over in the off season. This off season is only like 38 or something like that. It's not quite as high, but like I get up to 4,000 plus calories a day in the off
It's
season.
not such a bad
But
thing
during,
to have
but
it be like,
prep, during prep, I get down to like 2,000. Like I have a really adaptive metabolism to where like that math doesn't make any sense. But
yeah,
like I
2000 still nice though.
yeah, but I
For
mean, not many people have to go 2,000 calories lower than their off season or half their off season to get stage lean.
yeah,
Um, and
having
so that part's a little rough.
having a real high metabolism like that too, like 4,000 calories. That takes some work. Like it
Yeah,
does make growing some work. When your
it's
calories have to get up that high too. So
it's
it's
not as
not the
bad
worst
as
thing in the world to be at.
yeah,
Couple
it's not
hundred
as
calories
bad as
less
when I
than
was
that.
younger. When I was younger, I used to have to eat like 5,400 calories a day, like when I was 18, like when I was 125 pounds. Like, so to get me to like
Yeah.
170, and then where I think my food was the highest ever was that off season, but like I competed on my first show and it was like, okay, I got to get bigger. And like my food was, I mean, it was not the cleanest gaining phase.
You
That is
can't
for
get
sure.
to 5,200 calories eating
Well, I
clean
would, but
food.
I'm just saying, like visually, my body fat, that
Yeah.
was the highest my body fat's ever been in my life. I
Uh,
think after that first show, they told me I need to get bigger, and we didn't
did you
have
do a
all the.
dirty bulk?
Oh, I ate clean food. Like I just was eating tons and tons of it, and
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but yeah, 52, 5,400. I mean, I think it's about the highest I ever was when I was younger. That was miserable though. Like I
yeah.
was like
Dude,
everyone's like, oh, it'd be. I have clients always like when I mention I eat, I'll mention somewhere like, yeah, I'm eating like 3,800 a day. Like even now, I'm 38 and I work a desk job, and other than walking my dog and going to the gym, I don't really, I'm not that active, right? And so but I still eat like 3,800 a day in the off season, and they're like, oh, that must be nice, and I'm like, well, having food super high comes with its own set of challenges, just
yeah,
like like some of my younger guy clients that are trying to grow and are eating 4,000 plus calories a day have their own list of challenges, just like the
yeah.
just like the guy who can't get above like 2,500 in the off season and diets on like 1,600 at the end of prep.
Right.
Like that's eating 1,600 at the end of prep is another set of challenge, but
Yeah, it
food
is.
super high is not as fun as, like, the person who's eating 1,600 a day is like, oh, it'd be a blast to eat 4,000 calories every day. Yeah, it might be for that person for a few days, and then it's
Exactly.
not when you have to do it every single day. Like it
Exactly. And
feels,
keep consistent with it. So,
yeah, and
once your protein gets that high, once
you got
your,
to start drinking
calories
some of it. Yeah, I mean, when food starts getting that high, I mean, you got to start drinking calories. Some of
yeah.
your calories, you need to, you not go, I mean, things, you got to fit in some junk. I mean, you got to start looking at like, okay, like oatmeal and potatoes are super filling. I need to go with like
You can only eat so
rice.
many vegetables and clean foods.
Yeah.
It's going to be detrimental. It's going to make it hard to get that amount of calories. Once you get to
Yeah.
your,
And so it's like, I got to eat some
yeah,
rice and rice cakes and cereal and
yeah,
noodles and stuff to like get some of these carbs down, because I
yeah.
can't just pound potatoes and oatmeal. So
Right, right. Like you said, everything you tend to want what you can't have too.
yeah,
Everything looks good. There's someone who's eating a lot and is like, I'd kill right now to just eat a little bit less and
yeah,
grow. But we're all
yeah,
so different that way. But yeah, I do remember that um that eating challenge story. That was always something that made me laugh whenever I think about it, when she's got that picture.
yeah,
But so like, even like the side effects that come from competing, it does take a significant amount of time to get past that hump. And the more
yeah,
that one thing I explain to my clients who are working on growing and they have an off season in front of them and they're not maybe feeling so great because they're feeling a little bit thicker, the more times you go through this process, the more the outline of your physique changes. So you tend to look okay. You look, with clothes on, and you
yeah,
tend to start to really feel comfortable with your off-season body. And the off-season becomes a really enjoyable time. There's a lot of joy in the off season, and you're not so worried about, oh yeah, maybe I have some extra body fat on me, because you built muscle and made these composition changes over the course of, I mean, you've competed in 15 shows, I've been competing since 2013. So we've done this a ton of times and we've
yeah,
made tons of composition changes. So we tend to, like the way that we look in the off season, but during your first off season, you don't look, like you said, you looked, you started getting overweight. I've certainly done that before myself. So it's
yeah.
something
I
that you
was I
gotta
was
comes with
210 and it
experience.
wasn't pretty.
Dude,
So
I can look back on photos and I know like what stages I was at, and I was like, oh, that was my dirty bulk time where I was just eating
yeah,
like crazy and just
yeah,
packing in the calories. And
yeah,
yeah, I got overweight.
yeah.
So, but it happens, So how do you structure like your life bodybuilding balance during prep and during the off season? I think that's something that a lot of athletes don't think about. When they're in prep, they tend to be like, I'm in prep, I am a robot, like this is all
Yeah.
I'm gonna do. Screw everyone in my life, screw the job. I'm just gonna focus on the show, and then kind of life implodes.
Yeah.
So I think having like some good mental fortitude and a nice balance overall, whether you're prepping or in your off season, is beneficial for everyone. So how do you approach that with yourself and with your athletes?
Yeah. I mean, so I guess for me, you know, yeah, I mean, part of, diet or part of like my job prepping people for
Yeah.
requires me to like travel, right? And so like
Hmm.
I go to shows and stuff. And so, during my own prep, like I don't know how many in the fall of 2019 or sorry, not 20, fall of 2022, going into my spring 2023 shows, I was dieting. I
Yeah.
probably went to like 6 or 8 shows, like
Yeah.
I know that I
All
gave
over
too.
the country.
Yeah, because I mean, I
Yeah.
went to like Kansas City for IP Worlds, and I mean, mostly like Midwest, but like I went to like
Yeah.
Kansas City. I can't remember if I went to Lexington that fall or not. But yeah, I definitely traveled around. I know I gave 3 seminars in like January, February of 2023 and competed in March. And
Yeah.
so, traveling and like just bringing food with me and making it
Yeah.
work was, part of it, right? And
Yeah.
so that's part of the reason too why I compete as early in the year typically as possible. So that way the worst of prep is not when I'm like traveling to client
Yeah.
shows like 5 weeks in a row with like
Sure.
large groups competing. Um, but I think that but then yeah, I think also the like on the day to day, I think everything you do during prep, like a lot of those habits that are good to have during prep are things that you should probably keep doing in the off season. Like so many people get done with prep and then they're not planned. Like you probably should have some sort of plan or structure of your food for the day. Like it shouldn't probably be a free for all, like in the off season. Like you probably should be doing some sort of meal prep, like you did during prep, because most people don't have time to make fresh food at every single meal. You probably should, keep training hard. Like you shouldn't just train hard when you're dieting for a show. Stay
That's a
active.
big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Like a lot of
Yeah, a
people
lot of people
will,
try to turn the switch on when it's time to diet for a
yeah,
show and train hard while they're dieting, but like
you're
you're not
not
really
growing.
building a ton of muscle at
Yeah.
that point. You're growing in the off season,
Yeah, that's a
getting
good one.
adequate sleep, staying active throughout the day. Like a lot of those habits that are going to help you, make progress during prep and be your best on stage are the type of things like you should still probably be, doing a lot of those habits and things in the off
Yeah.
season just for, progress and overall health in some cases, especially when it comes to things like sleep.
People
Um,
tend to use prep as like a motivator to get in shape,
yeah, yeah.
and that's kind of like that prep is like more for fun or for like just motivation to get in shape opposed to like making physique improvements season after season. Because if you're not focused during the off season and you're not doing things like hitting your protein, reaching your calorie goals, training hard, people tend to maybe go through the motions and then preps like, here we go, flip the switch.
Yeah,
But the time to flip the switch, like
yeah,
that's in the off season when
yeah,
your energy is high, you're like going into the
yeah,
gym, like I'm gonna go, keeping track of your weights, all these
yeah.
little things that we do to keep growing. Because once you've been doing this stuff for as long as you and I have, the growth isn't like that,
Oh, it's slow.
125 to 175. It's like, it's small, it's super small. And sometimes like that's why taking pictures is so important, because sometimes it's hard to see unless like you put photos next to each other and you're like, oh, okay, I'm making progress.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, for someone who's like an experienced natural, it's
Yeah.
they will come. They a lot of times like you'll see like their stage weight hardly change. Like they'll diet down, come back in around the same stage weight, and they'll look better. They'll look different. They'll look better
Yeah.
when they're lean,
Yeah.
at around the same weight without a huge weight change.
Yeah.
Although I have had like some younger guys make just huge jumps, like natural guys make huge jumps in stage weight, because they're still newer to lifting and they're younger. And I had a guy, I think he went from like 140 or 145 up to like low 150s. Like, you know what I mean? And like over like a 3 year off season. And he's dieting again
Stage
this year.
weight, stage weight.
Stage weight.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
And he's dieting again this year. And I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing he's still gonna have to get below 160, but he isn't gonna need to be in the low 150s. Like it's gonna be upper
Wow.
150s.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, to be out, like, I mean, but again, that's someone who's,
Did he just
you
start
know,
training, go right into bodybuilding?
now he'd been lifting a while, but like he's someone young and somewhat newer, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not someone like me,
Yeah.
it's not like
I also
almost,
think, but
yeah.
people underestimate how much people think that after 30 or after 40, you just stop making progress. You don't. You
No,
can keep making progress. In fact,
yeah.
I mean, as men, we really don't even peak until we're like what, mid 40s,
Yeah, I mean,
upper 40s.
look at like Jeff Albert's progress. I mean, he's in his 50s now and he looks better than he did at 40. And he was already like a
Yeah.
really good bodybuilder at 40. And I mean, I just saw like Marshall Johnson last year win Masters Pro Show. Like it was a
Yeah.
40 plus he was like a show where they had a 40 to 49 pro and like a 50 plus
He's
pro.
been
And
competing forever.
yeah, he won the 50 plus pro and he won the overall against the, like he just unbelievable early, he almost,
And Marshall Johnson competed like every season. I mean, once he got to a certain point, he just said, I'm going to have a nice time with this, and
yeah.
would compete every single season.
But I think too, that's one thing I will say is my recommendations for like clients who, when should I compete again, right? So like,
Yeah.
I think back to last spring and like I had a client who was in her 50s compete for the first time. And
Yeah.
she's like, how long should I wait to do this again? And I said, don't do fall, but if you want to do spring, I
Yeah.
totally understand. You only have so
Yeah.
many more years to do this and be super competitive. Like, by all means, if you want to do it
Totally.
the next spring, like but if it's someone younger, like I had someone do their first show last spring and do really well in her early 20s. And it was how long till my next show? I said, at least, give it a couple of years, you know what I mean? Like, at least a year and a half, 2 years, you know what I mean? Like,
And you know
like
what?
the
It
answer
goes
was
by
pretty,
so quickly
yeah,
now. Like when you're 20, it seems like that's going to be like,
yeah,
take what, 2 years? It's kind of like, remember like in high school? I remember like in high school, I'd be like, this is never going to end. This whole process is never, like, time used to go by so much slower. But these off seasons, like I'm always like, man, like I could probably push this another year.
yeah, yeah. No, I would say, you said high school go myself, man. I went to college for 11 and a half years.
Yeah, you
It
did.
never felt it felt like it was never going to end. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I've been out of school for like almost 9 years already. Like where,
Did you
you
like
know,
school?
uh, yes, until the end.
It was
Like
just you were over it.
the first six, my first two college degrees, great. Yeah, my master's probably my favorite of all of my degrees, like class wise,
Yeah.
what I was teaching, what I was doing. Like I really enjoyed those 2 years. And my PhD, the first couple were all right. By like year three, four, I just I started realizing that academia was not for me. Like
Yeah.
there, like the research world, I spent an entire I took me 5.5 years to get my PhD, and a year of that time was spent waiting for approval on a study because I was using two universities and three medical facilities. And so it took an entire year for all five of those places to agree on the same wording on everything to let me do my study. Like I was like, yeah, I can't do this the rest of my life. I can't.
Yeah.
Like I was so over
Yeah.
like all of it. I was like, there's just no way. Like I'll go do something else. Like
Yeah.
I can't be someone in a university, like a professor in a university doing research. Like
Yeah.
I would have probably gone insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Right. Right.
had a couple opportunities come up over the years, and I just said no. Like to and
Hey,
I
you know
like
what
what.
you're like. You know what works for you.
Yeah.
You know, and you know
Yeah.
that like you would be miserable doing it.
Yeah, no, yeah, my friends that are doing it, man, I more power to them. I don't
Yeah.
know. Uh, it's just too much. It moves too slow for me. I think
Yeah.
that's the problem, right? Like I am someone who's like on top of stuff. Like
Yeah.
like with my clients, I tell them this is the morning, this is when you're checking in, get your update in the morning, and I will sit at my computer and get back to them like right away those mornings,
Mm-hmm.
because they're if you send, I want it, I
Yeah.
want to
You
make
have that
sure,
blocked out for what you're
yeah,
doing.
I'm like, all right, we're doing this,
Yeah.
make sure you're good, like get it in this time. I will get
Yeah.
back right away.
Yeah.
Like, let's not mess around here.
Yeah.
And, with it's just, man, I always just felt like I was just waiting on stuff and waiting on people all the time there. And I
Yeah.
just,
That's
I
hard when
don't,
it's out of your like,
yeah,
especially when you're on top of stuff, when it's out of your power and you're like waiting and you're just, waiting
yeah,
for people to do their job
yeah.
and go through their process.
Yeah, I know. Like I would get like something that a
Yeah.
document that need to like get reworded and sent to this place. I'd take care of it that afternoon, and then it'd be another couple of weeks before I'd hear back from anyone about anything. And it
Yeah.
just, yeah, I just can't. I couldn't do that the rest of my
Man,
like.
when I was in school, just high
Yeah,
school, I went to three high schools, and I always felt like I felt whenever I have to be somewhere like in a building, it doesn't matter. It could be an office building, it could be school, you know, when I have to be there and I'm told I have to be there and you have to be there from this time to this time, my skin crawls. I can't for whatever I always feel like I'm in jail. Like I feel like I need to break free. Like I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so I remember I always hated I liked the friend experience and the, you know, fun
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
That was a blast.
Mm.
But the academia and the just being somewhere that never worked for me. And I always respected people that were able to do school because I
Yeah.
just was not, it was not my thing.
I was fine with the school part. It was like the school part was great, the teaching part was great, and the research part was great until I started. I think, I at the time I was, when I was in grad school, I think at the time I was kind of pissed because I was in a lab where my advisor made me do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of the paperwork, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that allows research to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of people I was going to grad school with, their advisors just took care of it. So like for them, it was like this great experience. They just got to do the research and do the experiments. They didn't have to do all the behind the scenes like red tape. I dealt with a lot of the red tape, and at the time I hated it, but I think it was the best thing that could have happened in hindsight, because I realized like that's what my life would look like
Yeah.
if I went on and was a professor somewhere. I would be dealing with all this red tape to be able to do research, and it'd
Yeah.
be my students and stuff doing the research, not me.
Yeah.
And it just isn't, you know what I mean? So like, but the
Yeah.
school, like I said, but the school part of it, I was great at that. Like, as long as it was like something I was interested in. And like, I was one of those kids where like I was really good at math and science, but like I hated writing, which is ironic
Yeah,
because
it is ironic because you have the
I
book.
hated writing. Spelling, I was in like the average to below average spelling. Like I wasn't that good at that, but like math and science, I was super good at. Like chemistry in college, just like came to me. Like
Yeah.
I would like I didn't have to study that hard in like chemistry classes, and I would like set curves on tests. But like nat and phys, I remember like the anatomy part's all memorization, right? The physiology is how everything works. Almost everybody does better on the anatomy part because you just memorize stuff. Like the physiology, you have to think through stuff. I was completely the other way around. I sucked at the memorization. I can't memorize for crap. That's probably why I can't spell that well. But
Do you have a bad memory?
I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because I mean, like I can think through processes really well. Like
Mm-hmm.
statistics, I was awesome at. Like I
Mm-hmm.
took like 14 credits of grad level stats in grad school, and that was all like process, and it all made sense. But like some of my gen ed, and like I would get like A's in those classes, and like grad school, these freaking hard stats classes without trying that, excessively hard. But like I remember in undergrad trying to take some of these gen eds where it was all memorization, and those are the classes I think I had some of my worst grades in college. And I think partially I wasn't as interested, and partially I suck at memorizing stuff.
I think the interested is something that's
Yeah.
important. Like when you're
But
interested in something,
yeah,
you tend to get it, you know, like for me, I see I do have a bad memory. But if
yeah,
I'm interested in something, I
mm,
have like a crazy good memory.
yeah,
So you tend to pick and, you know, it's like
yeah,
you tend
yeah.
to lean into what you're interested in
Well,
and that stuff catches on real quickly.
Amy's pretty convinced, and I'm becoming more convinced that like if I was in school now, I probably would have been like labeled as on the spectrum somehow, somewhere like
What is she? What?
she no
Tell me.
she told
Hey, Amy will has no problem saying
she told me
she'll
this for
slice into you
years.
too.
So she's told me this for years. And then we watched like Love on the Spectrum on
I've
Netflix.
seen
And
clips of that show and it looks like real
and
cute. Like it looks
and I
like they're
started watching
endearing.
it, and I was like, and she'd like look at me when they'd say or do certain things, and I'm like, oh man, that is, like,
You might be on there somewhere.
yeah, I mean she's told me that for years. And then
That's too
we watched,
funny.
yeah, and so then I started being like, man, like that really may explain, like, there are
Uh,
people on there that got diagnosed as adults and stuff, and I'm like,
yeah.
I haven't gone as far to do that,
To
but like,
get like
I
a test or something.
yeah, I mean, like there was a guy who got like
Yeah,
diagnosed in his 60s, like he was just a fairly highly, he was just like a
sure.
you just had some of these things, and I was
quirks,
like,
like, yeah.
yeah, yeah, no. And so she's always, she said that for years, and then like I watched that show, and I was like,
She just
oh,
like, you're watching it. She just like looks over you. She goes, huh, sounds familiar, huh?
yeah, yeah. And so, um, no, so I mean, so that would explain also why, I was always so very good at like I
Yeah.
was in like gifted and talented math. Like I didn't study for some of these classes that were super hard, but I would study and suck at things that most people found easy, like
And you have
memorizing.
other interests too. I mean, outside of bodybuilding. I mean, you
Yeah,
you you do enjoy other things. I think being like
but
multifaceted is, go ahead.
but I was gonna say that's taken some work. I mean,
Yeah.
there it was like, I mean, for years it was like going to school in bodybuilding, and that was about it. Like
Yeah.
it's taken some work to like, but yes, it's much. I feel like I have a much more well-rounded, better approach to things these days than what I
I
used to
think
have.
that's important. I really do. I think if you only have bodybuilding, it's setting yourself up for a lot of stress
Yeah,
and a lot of anxiety and a lot of, I mean, even if something goes wrong, like, I mean, it's your body, so
yeah,
stuff comes up.
yeah,
So if you only have this one thing, that really leaves you open to turn this one thing into like something that is not a good thing because you're
yeah,
so obsessed on it. And you do, I think obsession to a certain degree is good. It's how you get really good at things and keep going and get far in things, like to be obsessive and meticulous. But
yeah,
for bodybuilding, it's like once you train and once you eat your food, there's a lot of other time in the day. And if you're
yeah,
just sitting there thinking about bodybuilding, you're going to overthink things. You're going to overanalyze. You're going to question yourself. You're going to question the process. You're going to create stress. And with that stress is really bad for bodybuilding.
yeah,
So having these other interests, I think, is important for, I find that the people that do the best with this stuff and make it for the, 15, 20 years, 30 years, make this a career, really. A
yeah,
bodybuild. Not if that you get it's your job, even though it's our career, but like the sport, to
yeah.
make a career out of the sport and keep improving, having other interests outside of bodybuilding. I find the people that do have that, they stick around.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, it's like I said, it's no different than the people who like are super into it and just compete over and over and
Yeah,
over again when they get started, right? Because they have nothing else, right? So they just keep competing, and
yeah,
run themselves into the ground. But yeah, no, I think it's good to have other things as well,
yeah.
and do other things and have and not just
What's
bodybuilding,
your other thing? What's your main like other thing that you like? Like for me, it's music and producing music. What's your thing that
yeah,
you
I
got right
mean,
now?
so I mean, I don't know, I would say probably I've always watched like trashy TV as
You sure do.
yeah, I
I love people who like don't know you probably are really gonna get a kick out of this. So like let's like divulge that, because like I think your clients, like the people that work with you, will really get a kick out of this.
yeah, no, so I mean, but I've always been like that, right? Like
Mhm.
I feel like I think all day
What kind
long,
of
so I want
trash
to go.
TV?
So yeah, I mean, Jersey Shore has always been a
Reality TV, right? Like
yeah,
this is the
yeah,
stuff
like
that you could turn your brain off and just
yeah,
laugh at.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I'll watch stuff like that. I mean, wrestling, like,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, you do. I know you like wrestling as
yeah,
well.
I mean, like,
Have you've been to a wrestling show, right?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, so like stuff like that, right? Like, and
Yeah.
just stuff where I don't have to,
I'm
or
trying to
the
think.
sports in general. I
Yeah.
play fantasy. I play in a pretty competitive fantasy football league that pretty much is going on. Like people are there's like a trade
Oh,
made in my
yeah.
fantasy football league this week. Like I feel like it's a
Yeah.
pretty competitive
Who's
league.
the wrestler? I got stopped. This was last week. I was
Seth
getting
Rollins.
what, yes. You know where I'm
Yeah,
going with.
yeah,
Okay, so yeah, I was getting a massage and I was sitting there like in
yeah,
the waiting area. And when I go to get a massage, I don't. put a robe on or do any, like, I'm a very much like, just put me in the room. I don't need all the cucumbers on my eyes.
Yeah.
Like, let's just get down to business. Like, so I, whenever I go to get a massage, like they're like, hey, the robe and the sandals. I said, don't, we just, the room's all I need. I said, I just got to go in there, strip down, and I'm good to go. I don't need like the pre-relaxation, you know? Said, okay, so just go sit in the waiting room. And I was like, all right. So I'm just sitting in the waiting room waiting for the person. And this lady comes out, and I could see that she was kind of like looking at me, like she was like worked there. And she's like, hey, she goes, I just want to say, like, you look exactly like this wrestler, and Seth Rollins was his name.
Yeah.
I said, before you go any further, I said, let me pull up a picture on my phone so I can know if this is an insult or not. And she started laughing. And I pulled up the picture, and I was like, oh yeah, I could see the resemblance. So it was, that's funny that you
He's
said
like
that.
one of their top guys right now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that, yeah, that's funny. That reminded me when you said
Yeah.
that of wrestling. I've gotten that before. So,
Have you?
um,
That's what I thought. I've
yeah,
always thought like you kind of look like him. Yeah.
I've gotten him. There's another wrestler that I've gotten. I can't remember his name.
Oh,
Um, uh, the one that I get the most is Jesus. So people will be like, they'll say like buff Jesus or something like that. And then Aquaman, like, just, I mean, anything with long hair and a beard, I think is
yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I've gotten. So it
Yeah.
depends if my hair is up or down. So it depends on what I got. But so no, that's funny. I'm glad we said something about that, because I think your clients in particular will see, people think like when you're a coach, like, especially with social media and all this stuff. I mean, we know each other, so we know each other's personalities, but what happens is you tend to talk about what what you're doing, what your career is,
Yeah.
and what you're bodybuilding. So you start to look a little more one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But then like when you start to,
Yeah.
people know you as a person, they're like, wait, you like this? No way. Or like, hey, I
Yeah.
didn't know you're into that. That's cool.
Yeah. No, that's where, yeah, I mean, because I mean, for me, I really don't post a ton of my personal life on
No,
my social
same.
media. It's pretty much just bodybuilding and like
Yeah.
business related stuff,
Yeah, you might
and
post a picture of your dog or you and Amy or something, a
yeah, here or there.
vacation. That's about as
Yeah.
personal as you'll get, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And so, for me, it's mainly just here are my clients, like because most of the
Yeah.
pictures of me are just like just holding space for an educational post. There aren't even that many pictures really of current pictures of me,
Yeah.
you know.
That's one thing I had Anna McManamy on here,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she had great advice. And if you notice, she just has endless pictures. Endless
Yeah.
pictures. She
Yeah.
does so many shoots while she
Wayne.
is lean. And she's got the right idea with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
She said that she was given advice, and they said, take as many professional photos with as many different looks as you can while you're lean. Now she'll get like 9 photo shoots and get them leading up. So yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
intense. That's a lot
Yeah.
of work. But
Yeah.
I
I
I
usually
really
just do
think
one
that's good
while I'm lean,
advice.
but yeah. Yeah. I just do one usually, but I mean that is
Same,
something.
same.
Yeah.
But
But
I
I mean
always
that's
wish I did more.
yeah, that's something a lot of people don't do that I always am
Yeah,
suggesting to clients, like, especially
yeah.
if they have like like say someone has 6 weeks between their shows. Those 6 weeks, if after that first show, those 6 weeks going into your second show are probably the most miserable part of prep and the part that feels like it's never going to end and
Yeah,
you don't feel great and your food's low and you're lean and
yeah.
you might be reversing in, but you still don't feel great. And so like I always try to get people to like break it up a little more. And I'm like, okay, stick a photo shoot in the middle of that 6 week gap. So now we got, because a lot of times people can, lose steam and kind of get off
6 weeks
track.
is a long time in
Yeah.
between shows after you've
So,
just
and so
competed.
like
There's a yeah.
and so, like, if you could stick a photo shoot, like, if you can do show like 3 weeks later, photo shoot 3 weeks later, show, like, it's going to be, a much better, you know what I mean? Like,
I always wish I'd do more. I don't like doing them. Plain and
yeah,
simple.
yeah,
I don't do. I mean, for me, taking my shirt off in a crowded gym is like nightmare fuel. That is the
yeah,
most uncomfortable thing in the world for me. And
Yeah,
you know what I like every time I'm doing it, I'm like, I feel like a complete tool, you know. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
God, here I am, like, you know,
yeah,
because I'm not like, look at me, look at me. I'm like, I kind of don't like that. And
yeah,
I feel it's very uncomfortable for me.
yeah, yeah,
And it's something I just put aside. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's get it done. Let's do a good
yeah,
job with it, you know? And if you've dieted for that long and you're that lean, it doesn't have to be in a gym, but getting photos, like
yeah,
you've just done something that 99% of the world has never done. You've gotten leaner than 99% of the world has ever gotten. Like
yeah,
taking photos is so important just so
yeah,
you have them to look back on because you'll really, really look back on this time fondly and you'll want to have documentation of
yeah.
it for your just for yourself and for your own, you know, for your own history. So
Yeah, and then I
yeah,
mean, stage shots can be really hit and miss depending on the show. You know what you get for
yeah,
those. You
mostly
know,
miss.
and so I mean, yeah, most of the best pictures I have of myself aren't on
Yeah,
stage. They're
yeah,
from
all right.
photo shoots. You know,
The
and
lighting use a lot of times that stage lighting is like it's a roll of the dice, you know. Some are good, but some are really bad, you know. And
yeah,
you'll typically look leaner backstage when you're going up some random stairwell and you
yeah,
got some nice harsh
yeah,
overhead
yeah,
lighting and you're
yeah,
back there taking
yeah,
pictures.
yeah,
That's where you'll be like, damn, why don't they have this? Just replicate this out
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Like they'll have like soft front lighting, you know, and you're like, why do you have front lighting? You know, like no.
yeah. Yeah, no, you get one of those. Yeah, you get to one of those shows where like it's like you said, the front lighting where it's like a
Yeah.
makeshift stage and like a ballroom, and like the lights are like right in front of you, like harshly pointing up at you,
Which
and
just
everyone looks
your
washed
legs
out.
just go away.
Oh
They
yeah,
just
in pictures,
completely
everyone.
disappear.
Yeah, the pictures look like everybody's not lean enough, and yeah, but
Yeah.
that's not the case. You know, like
Right,
if you're
right.
there in person, you're like, no, everybody's peeled. It's just, you know,
I
yeah,
yeah, I think taking photos, even like taking selfies and all that stuff while you're lean, just you know, even if it's just one per training session in the
yeah,
mirror at the in the bathroom, whatever. Like you got them. You'll want them
yeah,
for later. And you also never when you take them, you don't look at them and go, "Man, I'm so lean." It's typically not till later where you're actually like, "Ooh, I
oh yeah.
was shredded." Like I don't you know, you're not seeing this because you see yourself every day. So
Yeah,
you're not
it's
looking that impressive, but when you look back at them, you're like, "Oh yeah, I was definitely there."
yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, I've had many clients over the years who, you know, like I've kind of told them, okay, we're good. We can start reversing, or we can start working
Yeah.
food up, or we don't need to push down to like, you know, like I think we're, you know what I mean? Like we don't need to lose another like 2 or 3 pounds like we thought we might, or you know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so they, you know, a situation like that happens, and then like they'll send me a picture or something like, or reach out to me like a year later and be like, man, they'll send me like a picture of them like shredded, and they'll be like, what was I thinking? Like arguing with you that I wasn't lean enough. Like I'm peeled here. Like, you know what I mean?
I
But
think
like
that's such
you
a
have,
benefit of having
you have
a coach.
yeah, you have to get out of it to like
Yeah.
look back at your pictures and see like, man,
Yeah.
I was, you know, it usually, yeah, like
Yeah.
8, 10, 12 months later, like it's not uncommon for me to get messages from people who, you know, were like, they may during prep have pushed back a little when I suggested like, I think we're good, let's load some carbs and do this. And they think they need to be leaner, especially in some of the divisions where you can be too lean. Um, and
Like
so, you
bikini
know,
or something. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not uncommon for them to come back, you know, come back
Yeah.
and just once you, but I mean, we all think that too, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, I'll look at some of my photo shoot pictures from last year. I'm just like, man, I was, you know, peeled. And then, but when we pushed for more loss from there yet, but like, you look back and you're like, I was so freaking lean like a year ago.
I know.
Like I felt like I wasn't lean enough at all. Like, you
And
know,
don't you
like,
feel like these growth seasons, they make you appreciate the cuts too, you know? Like by the
yeah,
time like if you're really like if you know you're ready for your prep, you should be like chomping at the bit to prep again. You're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to not be full. I'm ready to grind, like I'm ready to feel the hunger again and go through this process, that's a really good indicator that you're,
Yeah,
you're ready.
you actually took an
You're
off. Yeah,
growing
because
enough. Yeah.
I mean that's what happens when those people that compete over and over and over and over again and never have an off season. A lot of times they struggle to like mentally go where they have to go, like
Yeah.
to get lean, because like the last couple months are tough, right? Like getting the last like 5-10 pounds off
Yeah.
is tough. For everybody, it's not fun.
No.
And if you it's been a couple years since you've competed, you can power through that, and it's like, yeah, this is just a couple months stretch, I'm fine. But
Yeah.
if you're always competing, you're always super restrictive, it can really be difficult to go where you need to go to make that happen and get that done.
So when's the next show for you? We thinking 2026 spring?
I don't know, we'll
Because
see.
I'm
I
typically like fall. I'm typically, so you and I are typically on the same schedule, just worked out that way. But you're typically spring and I'm typically fall.
Yeah, I mean, I had a guy just last week in the gym asked me when I was going to compete again. I was like, dude, it hasn't even been a year since my last show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm enjoying training and being strong and eating food, but,
Yes.
and like having more balance with life and being able to,
Because also 2026 means you start prep in 2025.
yeah. And so, yeah, if you're doing spring, definitely.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, no, so I think my thought at this point is, I'm definitely, I don't know if it'll be right away when I turn 40, but at least 40. So I turned 40 February of 2026. So,
Mhm.
2026, 2027, something like that, probably.
Yeah. Same.
Like
Same.
the next time I do it, I'm doing masters.
Same. I got my sights on 2026.
Yeah.
That's yeah, I think
I'll
that's
probably do like the
yeah.
last time and just it that
You
was the
got to.
best
Then we'll
thing.
be on the same so we can keep our schedule, or our schedule's gonna be all thrown off.
No, the best thing I could have done like with my last prep is I just didn't post about it, so nobody knew I
Oh
was.
yeah, that's did you find that was a game
That
changer
was
for you? You
awesome.
enjoyed that? What was
It
the
was
like
so awesome
benefit to that?
because if when people find out you're dieting for a show and you're lean and whatever,
Yeah.
like all of your conversations in life, I feel like are people asking you like, how's prep going? How is, whatever,
Yeah.
when's your show? How much more weight you have to lose? What's your body fat
Does
at?
that
Like,
does typically is that something that bothers you? Is it do you just or it's just you
yeah, I
just would
mean,
rather not talk about it?
yeah, I guess that, and then like people have all these expectations, like, oh, you're gonna win your show, which is like impossible.
Yeah.
If you're gonna compete when you're gonna win, you're never. If you're waiting for when you're gonna win your show, you're never gonna compete because that's not
Yeah.
possible.
Right.
Like you have no idea who's gonna be there, what the judges are looking for.
No
Like
clue.
you're never going to be able to guarantee you win.
Right.
And so, so then it's all these like expectations, like, oh, whatever. And then you start getting advice from this person and that person. Well, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that.
Yeah.
And I should say more than half the time, a lot of the time, it's not great advice. And so like, it was just nice
Yeah.
to avoid all of that.
And
And
completely unsolicited.
yeah, yeah, that too. And so
Yeah.
it was really nice to avoid all of that and just like I posted pictures of my clients, I posted educational posts, like my
Yeah.
social media content looked like it normally was. I went about my day. I stayed covered up in the gym so nobody at the gym knew how lean I actually was.
Hmm.
Um, which I don't know. I found kind of funny by the end. Like, at times I'd be like sitting there being like, yeah, I've got like lines in my glutes. I'm peeled out of my mind, and
Yeah.
nobody, none of these guys here have a clue how lean I am currently. All the
They
guys
probably
wearing.
just they were like, man, this dude's looking like gaunt.
Yeah, I mean, I would be wearing like I wore,
Because you get a pretty good diet face going too. Like we all
yeah,
we all get
uh,
some pretty brutal, like sunken in faces by the
yeah.
end.
But I mean, part of that too is coming from, you know, I I feel like most of my, like we talked about, my competitive career has been during
Yeah.
social media or during the bodybuilding.com or like the forums, right? But
Yeah.
like the early part, like none of that stuff existed. And so it was pretty
Yeah.
common to see, in a gym, like the guy, like everybody, I remember like 2002, 3, 4, when I was kind of getting into it, guys who were competing weren't really broadcasting it to the world that they were doing a show, or if people knew
Yeah.
they were doing a show, the guys trained covered up. You didn't know what they looked like till they got on stage.
Right.
So like you didn't know there were guys at your gym like getting ready for the show, but you didn't, you know what I mean? That's all, you know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and like a lot of the older guys said it like was so much less stress when like nobody knew anything and you just worried about yourself and did your own thing.
Yeah.
And so like
Interesting.
so part of my so like part of the like I guess so part of it was that, right, like thinking back to that, and I was like, what I was told like 20 years ago by some of these guys, but part of it too was 2020 when I my shows got canceled and I stayed, that was more public about that prep. And so my shows got canceled. I stayed lean. I traveled all over during COVID when people were like scared to leave their house and I didn't care. And so uh I got a lot of negative feedback from that. And like I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't care what your opinion is of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like the next time I'm not going to tell you anything and just go do what I want to do, so that was a big part of it too. You know what I mean? Was
Yeah.
like like part of it I think stemmed from 2020 also, but like the stress was just so much less. Like the only people that knew I was dieting for a show were like Amy and Cliff and my parents, I think, and one or two of my friends figured it out because we went to go do something I couldn't eat. But other than,
Yeah.
but like, but
It's like when a woman like she's who normally drinks alcohol and they're out and they're like she's like, no, I'm not gonna have any alcohol, and they're like, you're
yeah,
pregnant, aren't you?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
basically,
like same thing like
yeah,
happened. You know what I mean? You're like,
yeah,
no, I'm not gonna eat. I'm good. You're in
yeah,
prep, aren't you? So
yeah,
yeah, no, stress management is a big one. I mean, it's underlooked, but it is such a big part, like of the prep process. And if something stresses somebody out, like for one person, it could be family get, whatever, like certain people or certain scenarios or whatever, managing stress in a way without like, you don't want to lock yourself in four walls and let the four walls close in on you.
no,
That's not good. But
no,
figuring out what works for you, and you figured out like, hey, I don't like letting people know. I don't like
yeah.
broadcasting this or documenting this or, just making this a thing. I'm going to keep this to me and myself. And if that helps you
I
be
think
a
it
better
just goes
athlete,
back.
then yeah.
Yeah. I think, it goes back to just, like I was saying with like social media in general, right? Like people
Yeah.
broadcast their entire lives out there and I'm just,
Yeah.
I would rather not.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
especially as I've gotten older, I've just got, you know what I mean? Like I've just, I'm
Yeah.
like, like I don't need, I don't
And you
know,
don't
maybe,
have to, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's a tool and everyone uses it however they want to use it. Some
yeah,
people use it
exactly.
for some people, what you're saying is like, well, why would I even prep if I'm not going to get this attention? Like, so another person might thrive on that, where for someone who's more private like you, they might, not. So, I mean, it's
Yeah,
all about like doing what works best for you, and it's going to make the prep process more enjoyable
yeah.
and obviously make you a better athlete.
Yeah,
Well,
and I would say
yeah,
younger me though, like I went through phases of that too. Though, like younger
yeah,
me, like I have old training logs up on different forums and stuff, if they're
yeah,
even still up anymore. But you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like from 2006, eight, whatever. Like all of my preps and stuff, I logged all my workouts and
yeah,
progress pictures and whatnot on different forums and things back
yeah.
then. But yeah, I don't know. Things like I said, I feel like at the old guy, right? Like things have, like
No, man, no,
changed as
not
I've
yet.
gotten
We
older.
got a couple years before that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. No, it's
I feel like we're, in this sport, it's the only thing that you get
oh
better
yeah,
with it with age. Like there's
yeah.
not other sports that where the older you get in this sport, the longer you're in this sport, consistent, you're staying consistent, the better you are, which is
Yeah,
I
I
can't think of another real, sport like that.
no, I saw so many guys with really good physiques last fall, like in natural pro
Yeah.
shows in their 50s and 60s. And I'm like that, like as someone who's getting, close to 40 now, it's like really cool to see, okay, these guys are like 15, 20, 25 years older than me and still doing this. I've been doing it 20 years. I probably got, 20 plus more to go. You know what I mean?
Which is
like,
exciting. That keeps
yeah,
things exciting. It's hard,
yeah,
and that's like for me, like the off season. The off season is the most exciting part for me because I love the feeling of going in there and just tearing it up, training, like getting stronger, getting bigger. Like there is a ton of joy in that. And that's to me where intensity is at its highest is the off season.
Mhm.
Like that's where I'm like, let's because as you get leaner, training really, really starts to get more difficult. You're just so low energy and things just do not feel the same. So it keeps things exciting. I find that if you were only doing these preps, with these like lackluster off seasons, to
Yeah.
me that would be a nightmare. I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be truly a terrible
But I
experience for
think
me.
that's why a lot of people do burn out though, right? Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
only see them do that for a couple of years, and then whether the reason's mental, physical, or both, like
Yeah.
they're done. Like, you know, everyone just wants to, it's like you said, it seems like when you first get started, like a year or 2 years till your next contest season can be
Like an
so long.
eternity. Yeah.
But if this is something you plan to do for
Yeah.
10, 20 years, like if you can take a couple of years between shows, like if you do 2 years between shows and you do this for 10 years, it's 5 times that you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
dieting down. And I always try to tell people, a lot of times people ask me, like, well, how many shows should I do while I'm lean? Is a question I get from clients. Well, how many shows should I do? And I'm always like, well, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I think that, or a one size fits all, but I think it needs to be as many shows as needed so that you get what you want out of this. Like that you don't want to get to a point where like you're 3 months after your show and you're like, man, I wish I would have done more than that one show. I'm going to diet
Yeah.
for another one.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
get what you want out of it. If that's
Yeah.
if that's one show and that's good enough for you, fine. If that's 3 shows and 2 photo shoots, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
fine, right?
That's good
Like get what you
advice.
want out of it so that you really take an actual off season and you aren't tempted to diet back down again
That's good
in 3
advice.
months because you're regretting not doing more while you were lean.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I think just showing that in a world where everyone is just lean all the time because of Instagram, promoting this off season, this growth
I
season, and promoting like the longevity of this sport. I don't want to just maintain or regress. I want to get better and better
Yeah,
and better, as do
yeah,
you. So I think it's a great conversation. I wish I saw more of it. I wish I saw like more people promoting the long term, the 20-25 year, career in the sport, opposed to like this like
yeah.
competing. Got
That
to get the
doesn't
pro card, got to get the pro card. Stay lean,
that
stay lean.
yeah, that doesn't sell though, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I had 40 different clients step on stage last year, but I had I have all kinds of clients who are in the off season, right? Like
Yeah,
we aren't pushing them to do shows over and over and over again.
yeah.
Like I could have way more clients doing shows every year if I just pushed everyone into shows, but like you got to take off seasons, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, right.
like and actually take time to
Yeah.
progress and recover, and
Oh, it's
um
the boring stuff that's where
yeah,
all the good stuff happens is where things
that's
are
yeah,
not
but it
as,
doesn't sell,
sexy.
right? Like you
Yeah.
can see that with like everything in like nutrition and training, right? Like, I mean, like oftentimes with nutrition, most things in nutrition, most things in training, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably not an extreme, How many sets should
Yeah.
I do in a workout? Well, it's probably not one, and it's probably not
50.
50, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
How much protein should I eat? Well, it's probably more than like half a gram per pound if you're trying to maximize growth, but it probably doesn't need to be 2 and 3 grams per pound of body weight. It's somewhere in between, right? But
It's a spectrum and there's a ton of nuance involved.
yeah,
Ton of like, yeah.
but typically it's somewhere in the middle. It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
on most topics, right? It's not at one of the extremes. But if you go on, like, if you look at what people are trying to sell, it's always the extremes, right? Like, because bodybuilding is a sport that attracts people that are trying to achieve something extreme. It's that personality, right? So if someone says, yeah, you got to do this like super extreme approach, like
Well,
they're going to
anything
be fond of that.
controversial. Anything
What's that?
if you put anything controversial, that's the stuff that
Yeah.
garners
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, no, and
So
so everybody
yeah,
everybody wants this, like, like I'm fortunate that I lift at a gym where most people don't know what I do for a living. So I can go and lift and I don't get stopped. Because when I was in grad school and lifting at that gym, I had several clients at that gym and everybody knew what I was
sure.
studying and doing. And I would get stopped all the time and asked nutrition questions, but I still get stopped once in a while during workouts.
Hmm.
And so, like, but I'll get stopped and asked, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? And it's always something just extreme and, like training approach, nutrition
Yeah,
approach, whatever, right?
yeah,
It's never something like, I shouldn't say never. It's 95% of the time, it's not something that's actually going to be like a sustainable approach that person could do over the long term. So a lot of times when I get asked something like that, I kind of turn it back on them as a question, right? So like, I had someone ask me recently, what do you think of like 24-hour fasts as a way to like control calories and keep weight down and shoot for weight loss? And I said, well, what's your goal? Are you trying to, keep your, lose body fat? Is this something that's sustainable? Are you trying to build as much muscle as possible? Because the answer is going to be different based on that is. And it was someone who found that this was a really good approach for them to keep their body weight in check, and they've been doing it for like 6 months and a couple days a week, and it's worked great. And their goal isn't to get on stage or build as much muscle as possible. And I was like, all right, awesome. I mean, it's
hmm,
probably not the first thing I do, but if you can sustain it, like,
right.
and had they said, yeah, I want to get on stage and be as big as possible, or like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm really struggling to actually do this, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
then, you know what I mean? Like, my answer would have been different, right? But
Yeah.
and so it depends. So a lot of times, it's always, what I mean? Like, my answer a lot of times is the question. It's like, well, what are your goals? Are you sustaining this? How are you feel? Like, what do like,
Right.
you know, it's never, like you said, it's nuanced. It's not as simple as just yes or no.
So many what ifs, or if that, then this, or how do you feel when you do this? I mean, we could have we could give someone our approach and they just take one look at it and they're just gone. I mean, what
Well, my
it's
approach is
completely
super
different
boring,
for it's
right?
different for everybody. And especially if you're not looking to step on stage or be
Yeah.
eke the most amount of muscle growth out of your full potential. Some people are just trying to get through the week. Some people are
Yeah.
just trying to get through the day.
Yeah.
Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
completely individualized. But hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I know we've been talking about it for a little while, so I had a great time getting some face to face and talking about. I knew we'd have a good time on this. But is there anything you want to promote or let the people know? Any projects you're working on, or any stuff you got coming out? Because if so, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I have coming up is just, I don't know when this is going to be released, but we're in March now recording this. So like April show starts. So like
Yeah,
I got a good number of clients kind of targeting spring, summer, fall also,
yeah,
shows. And so, my busiest season in terms of like having clients compete is usually like April through November. And so we're just around the corner from like that getting
yeah. It's
started. You
close.
know what I mean? That's most of it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, having clients compete in coaching is going to be a lot of the next, 6 or so
Perfect.
months, like it normally is.
Yeah, man. It's crazy that it's here already. Like
Yeah.
this winter went by quick.
Yeah. I don't know how we're in March, or like I had someone send me pictures last or just earlier this week, like a couple days ago, and they're targeting a show in like mid-June for their
Yeah.
first show. And I was looking at their pictures and I was, kind of like analyzing things. I was like, wait a minute, mid-June is only
Yeah, it's
like
a rock throw
I like
away.
I was like, okay, they're 13 weeks out. I was like, wait a minute, mid-June's only 13 weeks out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I know. I'm excited, man. It's gonna be here in no time. I'm also gonna have your Instagram here. Pete does post very educational information. So if you're not already following Pete, make sure to follow him. And I'm gonna put your link to everything. I'll put a link to your book as well in the
yes.
description here. Pete wrote natural is Bodybuilding the book, and you and
Bodybuilding,
Cliff Wilson wrote that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So that's, you know, if you're a beginner, or even if you're you know, experienced, and you want to get insight into how everything works, the growing, how growing, how to build out your growing phase, how to prep, how to peak. The book has that broken down into its very, very, very simplest form. So go check that out if that's something you want to read. And Pete, man, I'll look forward to us seeing each other at some point here in person. We're gonna have to get a lift in, and have to, hopefully next time no one actually dies though.
We got a lift in last summer. You just had to leave right away.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah. So we're due sometime this season for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, you have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon, man.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.